Well, hello everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Bullets Athletic Spotlight. I'm Jen Mower, Assistant Director of Athletic Communications, and joining us today is newly appointed men's and women's cross country and track and field head coach Bryson Hartzler. He was the former assistant coach under Aubrey Schenk and is now taking over the reins. It's been a whirlwind of the last several months. And so what have been some ways that you have been keeping your student athletes involved and engaged?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Jen. It has been a little bit of a whirlwind. Like you mentioned, we do 3 seasons here, so having a spring and a fall cancel has been a little chaotic. But during this semester, we during a normal cycle we do the same thing, but I meet with everybody in a individual meeting. I go by class, so the past 4 to 5 weeks, I've been having individual meetings with everybody on in part of the program, and just things have even changed during that stretch, but just having a conversation with them, talking about what our plans are, what our goals are still for this season. Um, we have some senior leadership groups, some upperclassmen leadership groups that are breaking our program down into groups of 8 to 10, and they're having conversations about once a month on some predetermined topics. So obviously we'd love to do that on campus in the dining hall and things like that, but Zoom has been a great resource for us during this stretch, going back to March, um, to engage our students. Our training is a little bit different now that we have a on-campus cohort and then a portion obviously off-campus. So we just have a Google Doc that we update every week with our training plans, with our suggested times and performances for the week. So that's kind of how we've been approaching this semester specifically, um, with our people that are on campus and people that are off campus as well.
Yeah, and so actually that kind of leads into the next question because you mentioned goals and expectations. So
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the goals and expectations for the men's cross country team for 2020 to 21?
Yeah, so this was a pretty exciting season going into year one as head coach of cross country for the men's side. We have a lot of upperclassmen that have been doing some great things. Our senior class, the McKeever, Matsky, Kenyon, Rodriguez, PD, Kuyos. It's a really really large class, and some really great um, maturation from the time they got here as freshmen until now. So I was excited about that group, and then the rest of our program. Our junior sophomore class is really strong. I think we have 2 or 3 first years that can really mix up with the guys as well. So I am really excited about what we can accomplish as a cross country program. We've always been kind of middle of that pack within the conference, so we're looking to kind of break into that top three. Mix up with the Hopkins, Haverfords, Dickinsons of the world. Continue to chip away at our regional position. We want to kind of crack that top 10, kind of been in that top 15 range, and then just continue to have a presence at the national championship. We said Tabor a couple of years ago. Sam just missed it by a hair last year. I think McKeever was in a good position this year to kind of mix it up and have a chance to crack that national championship race. So those are some of the goals and expectations we have heading into this season for the men's program.
Well, that's awesome. And again, you're newly appointed head coach, but obviously no stranger to Gettysburg athletics.
Mm-hmm.
So as an assistant coach, what have been some of your favorite moments on the men's cross country side?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, I've been here for 6 years now. So have a lot of great things. When I got here in 2015, we had a really really great cohesive team. That was a fun team to have during my first year here. With like Noah Rossiter and Jackson Davis, and then some of those guys. It was just a really, really cool atmosphere to be around. They kind of set the standard for some of the leadership that we're seeing now throughout our program. Ben Tabor at the 2016 National Championship. That whole season was pretty exciting. I think Tabor, even when he tempoed a couple races, didn't finish outside the top 10 of individual finishers. Finished 46, I think, in the national championship, almost cracked. He ran 25 low, 25:04, I think was his personal best that season. So that was a fun season. And even Sam last year, Sam joined our cross country program as a sophomore. He ran track for us freshman year, and then joined us sophomore year. I think his first race, he was running like 28, 29-minute 8K, and he ended up running 25:30, I think, to end his senior year. So a pretty big stretch. And just, Sam's just one example, but a lot of the maturation and and the progress that our student athletes make here in our program is just exciting to sit back and watch unfold.
For sure. And last year was certainly an exciting year, finishing 16th, if I remember correctly, in the NCAA Division III regional, which
Yeah.
was the highest mark since, I believe, since 2010.
Mm-hmm.
So now, going to kind of turn it a little bit on the personal side.
Okay.
And obviously, we work in athletics, and we all have probably had sports heroes, favorite professional teams growing up.
Yeah.
Who have been your sports heroes and favorite professional teams?
Sure. So even though I'm a central Pennsylvania guy, like my professional sports teams are kind of all across the map. So I was a big Seattle Supersonics fan back in like um, Gary Payton, Sean Kemp, Detlef Schrempf. That was a big sports team of mine. Like pretty much any team that was popular on like NBA Jam or Madden, those were kind of my teams. Like the Washington football team now that those early '90s when they're actually pretty good, like the Art Monks and Darryl Green years. Those when I was starting to kind of get into football a little bit. So those are some of my professional teams, and then I'm a Penn State graduate, so I'm a big Penn State sports fan. So my coaching mentors, like Coach Alfred Sullivan was my coach when I was at Penn State. She's a great leader, great role model. She's at Tennessee now, and even like Coach Russ Rowe. When I was an undergraduate, I took one of his classes, ethics of coaching, and he was just a pretty cool individual to be around with all the success that he has in women's volleyball, obviously. And just his demeanor and how he handles himself. He's really sarcastic and funny. That was something that kind of stood out. You don't necessarily see that when you're watching him on the sideline of a national championship game for women's volleyball. But those are some of the sports that I'm interested in, and some of the people that have kind of impacted my coaching career as well.
So obviously during quarantine, we had a lot of free time at home. So was there any new hobbies or maybe habits that you picked up during that time?
Maybe just rekindled a habit. I used to do a little bit of fishing when I was younger, but being a spring coach, that doesn't well, coaching year round, but being a spring season coach, you don't get a whole lot of time to do that. But my wife Melissa and we got a puppy during quarantine, so she's 7 months old now. So that kept me busy training a new puppy. But those are some things, and we got road bikes. So when we lived closer to the battlefields, we did a lot of biking through the battlefield. So those were some of the things that kind of got us through that quarantine period.
Well, and that actually was going to bring it into the next segment. So you did live in the town of Gettysburg during your
Yep.
time before you just recently moved.
Right.
So what were some of your favorite things that you enjoyed doing in the town?
Yeah. So I lived right by Seminary Ridge. So I was like, a quarter mile from Confederate Avenue and going out towards Virginia Monument. So that was a pretty cool area, like I said, to ride bikes and things like that. One of the first things I did here back when I first got here is my parents and I went on a Gettysburg tour. So that was pretty exciting. And then just being kind of close to downtown, so you could walk to Gary Owens for dinner or the Gettysburg or Blue and Gray, like those, just kind of being in the closer to Gettysburg and enjoying some of the restaurants and accommodations and shops of Gettysburg was pretty fun.
Now, is there any new tradition since moving and living in the Gettysburg area that you've kind of picked up and have enjoyed doing year after year?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, I know there's a lot more like a ghost tour presence. I know that was one of the things I did with some of my friends that are interested in that. One of the first years I was here is that ghost tour experience. But that would probably be the big one. And then obviously reenactment weekend over the summer traditionally is a pretty hectic and buzzing time in the town of Gettysburg.
Well, that's a wrap. So, Bryson, thank you so much for joining us and for those tuning in for another edition. So, make sure to stay tuned for next week. So, for Bryson, I'm Jen Mower signing off. So, until next time, go Bullets.